Have you ever noticed how every notification, every message, every headline seems to demand an immediate reaction from you? We live in a world that prizes speed over thought, instant replies over meaningful responses, and emotional outbursts over measured consideration. This constant pressure to react instantly leaves us feeling drained, overwhelmed, and often regretting words spoken in haste or decisions made in the heat of the moment. But what if there was another way? What if the secret to mastering your life wasn't about reacting faster, but about pausing longer? 2,000 years ago, the Roman emperor and philosopher Marcus Aurelius observed, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. This simple yet profound insight lies at the heart of Stoic philosophy, offering a counterintuitive approach to modern life's chaos. Instead of being carried away by every impulse, the Stoics taught the transformative power of creating space between stimulus and response. This isn't about suppressing emotions or becoming passive, it's about reclaiming your agency, your clarity, and ultimately, your peace. In this video, we'll explore exactly what happens when you stop reacting immediately and begin embracing the Stoic practice of thoughtful response. We'll dive into how this shift enhances emotional regulation, sharpens cognitive clarity, builds unshakable resilience, and cultivates a deep sense of inner peace. This isn't just philosophical theory, it's a practical guide to navigating daily challenges with greater wisdom and intention. Whether you're dealing with difficult conversations, unexpected setbacks, or the constant noise of modern life, these principles offer a path to mastery over your reactions and, by extension, your life. So join me as we uncover how doing less in the moment can actually help you achieve more in the long run. Stoicism teaches that between what happens to us and our response, there is a gap, and in that gap lies our freedom. This is the very essence of the Stoic concept of proseuche, a Greek term meaning attention or mindfulness. It's the disciplined practice of bringing your full awareness to the present moment, to your initial impressions, before you allow them to dictate your actions. This isn't a passive state, it's an active and powerful intervention. Think of it as hitting the mental pause button before the automatic playback of a heated reaction begins. By creating this space, you shift from being a passenger on a runaway emotional train to becoming the engineer in control of the locomotive. This transformative idea is perfectly captured by the Stoic teacher Epictetus, who famously said, "We are disturbed not by events, but by the judgments which we form about them." The event itself is neutral, it simply happens. The criticism from your boss, the rude comment from a stranger, the unexpected traffic jam, these are external occurrences. The disturbance, the anger, the anxiety, that all comes from the internal judgment you instantly attach to that event. Proseuche is the tool that allows you to catch that judgment in the act. It gives you the precious seconds needed to question it. Is this truly a catastrophe or merely an inconvenience? Is this person's comment a malicious attack, or could it be a poorly delivered piece of useful feedback? Consider a practical example you might face tomorrow. A colleague critiques your presentation in a team meeting. The immediate, raw impulse might be to feel attacked, to become defensive, to fire back a sharp retort to protect your ego. This is the stimulus. Now apply the pause. Instead of that retaliatory reaction, you take a breath. You create that gap. In that space, you engage your rational mind. You might evaluate the critique. Is there any truth to it? Even if it's delivered harshly, could there be a nugget of valuable information that could help you improve? By separating the message from the messenger's tone, you can choose a response that is constructive rather than destructive. You might say, "Thank you for the feedback. I'd like to understand your perspective better. Could we discuss this one-on-one after the meeting?" This approach de-escalates the situation, demonstrates professionalism, and turns a potential conflict into an opportunity for growth. Now, bring this concept into your own life. Can you recall a recent situation where your temper flared or your anxiety spiked? Perhaps a heated argument with a partner or a moment of panic when you received bad news. Replay that moment in your mind, but this time insert a deliberate pause. Imagine if, in that critical second, you had simply stopped to breathe and observe the initial judgment forming in your mind. How might the outcome have been different? That space, that moment of processing, is where your power truly resides. It's the difference between a reaction you later regret and a response you can feel proud of. This distinction between what we can and cannot control is the very bedrock of Stoic practice, a principle known as the dichotomy of control. So let's ask that fundamental question: what can you actually control in any given situation? The ancient Stoic teacher Epictetus opens his famous handbook with a powerful, life-altering statement: "Some things are within our power, while others are not." He goes on to clarify that within our power are our opinions, our impulses, our desires, our aversions, in essence, our own voluntary choices and actions. Everything else, from our reputation to our health to the weather, is not directly within our control. This isn't a pessimistic view, it's an incredibly liberating and realistic one. It's about redirecting your finite energy and attention away from the storm you cannot stop and toward the way you choose to sail your ship. Think about a situation almost everyone has experienced. You're running late for an important meeting, and you hit a massive, unexpected traffic jam. Your immediate reaction might be frustration, anger, leaning on the horn, or even road rage. But let's apply the dichotomy of control. Can you control the traffic? Absolutely not. Can you control the fact that an accident happened miles ahead or that a light is malfunctioning? No. Can you control the car in front of you? Not at all. What then is within your control in this exact moment? You control your breathing. You control your judgment about this event. Will you label it a catastrophe or simply an inconvenience? You control whether you white-knuckle the steering wheel with rage or use this forced pause to listen to an informative podcast or some calming music. You control whether you make a frantic, unsafe phone call or send a calm, professional message stating you've been delayed. By focusing exclusively on your sphere of control, you transform a stressful, reactive experience into a manageable one. The traffic hasn't changed, but your suffering has ended. Now, bring this into your own daily life. What external events consistently trigger those immediate, heated reactions in you? Is it a family member's dismissive comment, the constant stream of bad news on social media, a project at work going off the rails due to someone else's mistake? For a moment, mentally list your top triggers. Now, apply the filter of the dichotomy of control. How many of these triggers fall squarely into the category of things you cannot control? The opinions and actions of other people are almost always in that external category. When you stop trying to control the uncontrollable, you are not giving up, you are stepping into your true power. You are choosing to invest your effort where it will actually yield a return, in managing your perceptions, your actions, and your character. This shift in focus is the ultimate strategy for mastery over your inner world, which is, as the Stoics argued, the only world you can truly command. The Stoics sought a state of calm clarity, not emotional numbness. This ideal state is called apatheia, a concept often misunderstood in our modern language. It doesn't mean becoming apathetic, indifferent, or cold. Instead, it translates to a freedom from pathos, those destructive, overwhelming, and irrational passions that hijack our judgment and force us into reactions we later regret. It's about achieving a serene and stable mind, a state where your emotions inform you rather than control you. Think of it like the difference between a calm, deep lake and a turbulent, churning ocean. Both contain water, but one reflects the sky with perfect clarity while the other is a chaotic mess of waves. Apatheia is that still, clear water within you. The philosopher Seneca wrote extensively on this, particularly in his work on anger. He describes anger as a brief insanity, a temporary madness that seizes control. He doesn't argue that we should never feel the initial spark of irritation. That's an involuntary biological reaction. The critical move is what happens next. Do you fuel that spark into a raging fire, or do you let it fizzle out before it can cause any damage? Seneca advises us to delay our response. He suggests that even the act of counting to 10, of forcing a pause, can be enough to allow reason to reassert its command over emotion. This deliberate interruption of the impulsive cycle is how we cultivate apatheia. Imagine a practical scenario. You receive a sharply worded email from a client, publicly criticizing your work and copying your entire team. The immediate, visceral pathos might be a surge of hot anger, mixed with embarrassment and a defensive urge to fire back an equally sharp rebuttal to defend your reputation. This is the destructive passion. Now apply the Stoic ideal. You acknowledge the feeling, the sting is real, but you refuse to let it dictate your typing fingers. You close the email, you take a walk, you might even draft a response in a document you never send. After this pause, you can approach the situation with composure. Your reasoned response might be to request a private call to understand their concerns fully, transforming a public confrontation into an opportunity for professional resolution. Your calmness isn't weakness, it's immense strength. So, which emotions most often lead you to react hastily? Is it the quick flash of anger in a traffic jam, the gnawing anxiety from an uncertain future, or the sharp sting of jealousy when a colleague succeeds? Take a moment to identify your own most frequent pathos. Now, consider how cultivating apatheia might change those moments. It wouldn't erase the emotion, but it would give you the power to say, "I feel this anger, but I am not my anger. I will not let it choose my words for me." This practice builds a profound inner stability, a core of self that remains unshaken by the external chaos, allowing you to engage with the world from a place of purposeful choice rather than chaotic reaction. Marcus Aurelius offers us a key to this entire practice when he writes in his Meditations, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself but to your estimate of it." This is the core of the Stoic teaching on judgment. The event itself is neutral, it simply exists. The emotional weight, the distress, the turmoil, that is not baked into the event. We add it ourselves through our interpretation. We are the authors of our own emotional suffering through the stories we tell ourselves about what things mean. A delayed train is just a delayed train until we judge it as a personal injustice that ruins our entire day. A critical comment is just a series of words until we judge it as a devastating attack on our character. This power of judgment is what the Stoics called hypolepsis, our faculty of assent, our ability to give or withhold our agreement from our initial impressions. When a thought enters your mind, "This is a disaster," or "They meant to insult me," that is just an impression, a first draft written by your subconscious. Hypolepsis is your chance to edit that draft before you publish it as your official belief and let it dictate your reaction. It's the moment you can stop and ask, is this actually true? Is this the only way to see this? This act of questioning your own automatic judgments is the most powerful form of self-defense against emotional hijacking. Consider a deeply relatable scenario. You send a close friend a heartfelt text message, and hours go by with no response. The initial automatic judgment might immediately leap to, "They're ignoring me. I must have done something wrong. They're angry with me." This interpretation, this story you've instantly created, is what generates the feeling of anxiety, rejection, and hurt. But what if you paused to apply your faculty of judgment? What if you reevaluated that initial impression? You could then generate alternative and often far more likely explanations. They are probably just busy at work. Maybe their phone battery died. They could be taking some needed quiet time for themselves. By consciously reframing your judgment of the event, you completely change your emotional response. The external fact, the unanswered text, remains identical, but your internal reality shifts from one of distress to one of patience and understanding. This practice transforms your entire experience of the world. It moves you from being a passive recipient of emotional triggers to an active interpreter of your reality. How might reframing your initial judgments change your emotional responses in your own life? The next time you feel that familiar surge of irritation or anxiety, pause and identify the hidden judgment behind it. What story are you telling yourself about what this event means? Then deliberately craft a new, more rational and more generous story. This isn't about naive positivity, it's about disciplined realism. It is the practice of choosing the interpretation that serves your peace and your purpose, rather than surrendering to the one that breeds only turmoil. This mastery over your inner judgments is what allows you to stop reacting to the world you think you see and start responding to the world as it actually is. By anticipating challenges, we reduce their power to surprise and upset us. This is the profound purpose behind the Stoic exercise known as premeditatio malorum, which translates to the premeditation of evils. Far from being a pessimistic practice of dwelling on the negative, it is a powerful psychological tool for building resilience and dismantling the element of shock that so often triggers our most reactive, fear-based responses. The Stoics understood that we suffer more in our imagination than in reality. This exercise is a way to confront those imagined fears head-on, to inoculate ourselves against life's inevitable hardships by familiarizing ourselves with them in the safety of our own minds. Seneca, in his letters, offers some of the clearest advice on this practice. He writes, "We should project our thoughts ahead of us at every turn and have in mind every possible eventuality instead of only the usual course of events." He advises us to rehearse in our minds the potential losses, setbacks, and difficulties we might face, not so we live in dread of them, but so we are prepared for them. This mental rehearsal does something remarkable. It transforms the unknown into the known. A potential disaster that lives in the shadows of your mind is terrifying precisely because it is vague and formless. By dragging it out into the light of your rational mind and examining it in detail, you strip it of its terrifying power. You realize that even in the worst-case scenario, you still have agency, you still have choices, and you can still endure. Consider how you might apply this to a common modern stressor. Preparing for a difficult conversation with a family member about a sensitive topic. Your initial, unexamined fear might conjure images of an explosive argument, painful words being exchanged, and a permanent rift in the relationship. This fear could easily lead you to avoid the conversation entirely, a reactive move based on avoiding discomfort. Now apply premeditatio malorum. Sit down quietly and deliberately walk through the worst-case scenario. Imagine the other person becomes angry and accusatory. What would you do? Your rehearsed response might be to not match their anger, but to calmly say, "I understand this is upsetting. I want to hear your perspective fully. Imagine they say something truly hurtful. Your prepared reaction could be to take a deep breath and respond with, "That comment was painful to hear, but my goal here is to find a way forward that works for both of us." By pre-scripting your composure, you are not planning for failure. You are planning for your own virtue and stability regardless of their reaction. You go into the conversation not fearing the outcome, but confident in your ability to handle whatever arises with grace. This practice builds a formidable kind of courage. It's the difference between a soldier who has never seen combat and one who has undergone rigorous, realistic training. The trained soldier may still feel fear, but they have a deep well of practiced responses to draw from. Their actions are not pure panic, but disciplined reflexes built through repetition. Premeditatio malorum is your personal training ground for the battles of daily life. It ensures that when adversity strikes, your first instinct is not a blind reaction, but a considered response that you have, in a way, already chosen. Think of an upcoming event in your own life that carries some anxiety. It might be a major presentation, a financial decision, or a travel plan. Take just a few minutes today to practice this stoic exercise. Close your eyes and vividly imagine the worst-case scenario unfolding. What is the very worst that could reasonably happen? Now, mentally walk yourself through it. How would you handle it? What resources would you draw upon? Who could you ask for help? Crucially, visualize yourself remaining calm and resourceful throughout. You will find that simply by engaging in this brief mental simulation, the anxiety around the event noticeably diminishes. The monster under the bed loses its power once you turn on the light and see it for what it really is. This is how we systematically disarm our fears and build an unshakable foundation of preparedness, allowing us to meet the future not with trepidation, but with quiet confidence and unwavering equanimity. The Stoics believed that obstacles are not hindrances but training grounds. This perspective fundamentally reframes the nature of difficulty in our lives. Instead of seeing a challenge as something to be avoided, resented, or reacted to with frustration, the Stoic sees it as the necessary resistance against which strength is built. It is the weight that makes the muscle grow stronger. This isn't about mere positive thinking. It's a profound recognition that the very fabric of our character is woven on the loom of adversity. Without the tension and friction of obstacles, we would remain untested and underdeveloped, never knowing the depth of our own capacity for endurance, creativity, and virtue. Marcus Aurelius, who faced endless military campaigns, political betrayals, and personal loss during his reign, penned a powerful reminder to himself in his Meditations: "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This is the essence of turning a barrier into an advantage. He is saying that the obstacle itself contains the seeds of its own solution. A blocked path forces you to find a new one, often a better one. A criticism forces you to re-examine your work, potentially strengthening it. A financial setback forces you to re-evaluate your priorities, perhaps leading to a simpler and more meaningful life. The obstacle isn't a stop sign, it's a redirection. Your response to it, whether you break against it or use it as a stepping stone, determines everything. We find a powerful historical example in the life of Seneca the Younger. After a successful career as a senator and advisor in Rome, he was accused of adultery with the emperor's niece and sentenced to exile on the island of Corsica. This was a catastrophic fall from grace. He was ripped from the center of power, culture, and intellectual life and banished to a remote, rugged place for 8 long years. A reactive, non-stoic response would have been despair, bitterness, and a constant fixation on the injustice of it all. But Seneca chose the stoic path. He reframed this immense obstacle. He saw his exile not as a prison sentence but as an opportunity for uninterrupted philosophical practice and writing. It was during this period that he produced some of his most significant works, including Consolations to His Mother, that are masterclasses in applying Stoic comfort to real-world suffering. He used the isolation to deepen his understanding of virtue, poverty, and the true sources of happiness, emerging not as a broken man, but as a philosopher with a depth of character forged in hardship. This transformative approach is available to every one of us in our daily lives. It begins by shifting the internal question we ask when faced with a problem. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" which leads to victimhood and reactivity, we can ask the Stoic question, "What does this situation require of me?" How can this be used? Perhaps a difficult coworker is not merely a source of irritation, but a chance to practice patience, assertiveness, and emotional detachment from others' moods. A project failure is not just a blow to the ego, but a rich source of data on what to improve for next time. Even a personal loss, while deeply painful, can become a training ground for compassion, gratitude for what was, and a deeper understanding of the transient nature of all things. So consider a challenge you are currently navigating. It might be a professional setback, a health concern, or a strained relationship. Now apply this Stoic lens. How can you actively reframe this obstacle as your personal training ground? What specific virtue like patience, courage, wisdom, or justice does this situation invite you to practice? By consciously viewing the difficulty as a curriculum rather than a punishment, you fundamentally change your relationship with it. You move from being a passive recipient of misfortune to an active participant in your own growth. The obstacle ceases to be something that happens to you and becomes something you are working with. This mental shift is the very engine of resilience, transforming life's inevitable hurdles into the very tools that build an unshakable character. Where is your focus right now as you listen to this? Are you fully here, or is part of your mind replaying a tense conversation from this morning, or perhaps already worrying about a deadline tomorrow? This constant mental time travel away from the present moment is one of the primary triggers for those immediate, often regrettable reactions. We react not just to what is happening now, but to the ghosts of the past and the specters of the future that we allow to haunt our current experience. The Stoic practice of prosauche, that disciplined attention, is in many ways the ancient ancestor of modern mindfulness. It is the unwavering commitment to anchoring your awareness in the here and now, because this is the only reality over which you have any direct influence. Epictetus cuts to the heart of this with characteristic clarity, advising us to never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present. His instruction isn't to ignore planning, but to cease the anxious preoccupation with a future that exists only in our imagination. His focus was always on the present task, the current duty, the immediate impression before you. He understood that a mind split between what is happening and what might happen is a mind weakened, distracted, and primed for a knee-jerk reaction. Mastery is found in doing what you are doing while you are doing it, and thinking what you are thinking while you are thinking it, nothing more, nothing less. You can cultivate this ability with a remarkably simple practice, one that is always available to you. The next time you feel that familiar surge of stress, perhaps when a notification pings with a demanding message, or you feel criticized instead of immediately engaging, turn your attention to your breath. This isn't about taking deep, dramatic breaths to force calm. It's about simply noticing the physical sensation of the air moving in and out of your body. This single, conscious act does something profound. It creates that critical gap. For those few seconds, you are not caught in the story about the stressful event. You are simply observing a neutral, biological process. This momentary anchor in the present allows the initial wave of emotion to peak and begin to subside, giving your rational mind the space it needs to come back online and choose a response. You move from being overwhelmed by the content of the thought to being the aware observer of the thought itself. Begin to notice the specific moments when your mind wanders into those unhelpful territories. It might be while you're washing dishes and suddenly you're mentally arguing with someone again, or when you're trying to read but your anxiety about an upcoming event pulls your focus away. The practice isn't to judge yourself for this wandering. That would just be another reactive thought. The practice, the Stoic exercise, is to gently note, I am dwelling on the past, or I am worrying about the future, and without any frustration, guide your attention back to a present moment anchor. That anchor could be the feeling of the water on your hands, the words on the page, or the sound of the narrator's voice. Each time you do this, you are not just calming down, you are performing a repetition on the weight machine of your mind, strengthening your ability to remain the master of your attention rather than its servant. This is how we build the mental muscle that prevents us from being dragged into reactions by every passing thought or feeling, allowing us to remain steady and clear amidst the constant flow of life. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. In our eagerness to be heard, to defend our position, or to have the last word, we often forget the immense strategic strength found in simply listening. The Stoics placed tremendous value on this practice, viewing reckless speech as a leakage of vital energy and a common source of self-created trouble. They advocated for mastering the ears before the tongue, understanding that true communication begins not with talking but with absorbing. The founder of Stoicism, Zeno of Citium, put it succinctly when he said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." This wasn't just a cute piece of advice, it was a foundational principle for rational engagement with the world. It's a reminder that our default setting should be receptivity, not broadcasting. Consider a scenario that plays out in homes and offices every single day. A disagreement with your partner begins to escalate. Their tone becomes sharper, their words more pointed. The immediate, automatic impulse is to interrupt, to correct their version of events, to fire back a counter-accusation to protect your own standpoint. This is the moment where the Stoic art of silence becomes your most potent tool. Instead of fueling the fire with your own words, you choose to consciously withhold your immediate rebuttal. You stop speaking and you just listen, not passively, but with deep, focused attention to what they are actually saying beneath the anger. You are not agreeing with them, you are simply creating a container for their frustration. This act of deliberate silence does several transformative things at once. First, it de-escalates the emotional temperature immediately, as an argument requires 2 active participants to sustain its heat. Second, it allows you to gather crucial data. You might hear the real, underlying concern hidden beneath the harsh words, a feeling of being unappreciated, a fear of being ignored. Third, and most importantly, it models composure and respect. When they have finished, instead of reacting, you can respond from a place of understanding. You might say, "What I'm hearing is that you felt overlooked when I made that decision without consulting you. Is that right?" This reflective listening, born from that initial silence, validates their feeling without necessarily agreeing with their delivery, and it opens the door to genuine resolution rather than a battle of wills. Now, bring this into your own experience. Can you recall a recent conversation where your immediate words made a situation significantly worse? Perhaps you sent a text in anger that you immediately wished you could retrieve, or you interrupted a colleague in a meeting only to realize you had completely misunderstood their point. In that moment, the urge to speak felt urgent and justified, but the outcome was more conflict and misunderstanding. Now, reimagine that same scenario with the application of strategic silence. What if you had taken a long pause instead of launching your defense? What if you had asked a clarifying question instead of stating your assumption as fact? That space, that intentional quiet, creates the possibility for an entirely different and more positive outcome. It allows you to respond to the actual root of the issue rather than just the noisy symptom. This practice transforms communication from a reactive competition into a collaborative exploration, building bridges of understanding where hasty words would have only burned them down. Stoicism doesn't teach suppressing emotions but understanding them. It invites you to become a curious observer of your own inner world, to notice the emotional weather without feeling compelled to run for cover every time a storm appears. This practice, often called Stoic detachment, is not about becoming cold or indifferent. It's about creating a small but crucial separation between the feeling itself and the action you take because of that feeling. Think of it as sitting on the riverbank watching the current flow by, rather than being swept away in the rapids. You acknowledge the water's power, you respect its force, but you are not in it. From this position of observation, you regain your footing and your ability to choose your next move with clarity and purpose. Marcus Aurelius provided a beautifully practical metaphor for this in his Meditations. He advised himself to step back and view his emotions and impressions from a distance, to see them for what they truly are. He wrote, "You can strip away many unnecessary troubles which lie wholly in your judgment. For then you will see things for what they are." This mental move of stepping back is the essence of detachment. It's the difference between being consumed by a wave of anger and simply noticing, anger is here. That simple act of naming the emotion, of observing its arrival without immediately fusing your identity to it, dramatically reduces its power to dictate your behavior. The emotion is no longer the commander of your ship. It becomes a passenger you are aware of, and you retain control of the wheel. Consider a situation where this skill transforms a potential conflict into a moment of connection. You arrive home after an exhausting day, looking forward to a quiet evening, only to find your partner has left a significant mess in the kitchen. The immediate, raw impulse is frustration, perhaps even a sharp comment born from fatigue and irritation. This is the emotional wave. Applying Stoic detachment, you catch that initial surge. You notice the frustration arising, you feel the heat of it, but you make a conscious choice not to speak from that place. You might say, "I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed and I need a few minutes to decompress before we tackle this." Then you take that time. Maybe you step outside, splash water on your face, or just take 10 deep breaths. Later, from a place of calm, you can address the situation collaboratively. "The kitchen is pretty chaotic, and it adds to my stress at the end of the day. Could we work out a system to clean as we go?" This approach, born from detachment, addresses the real issue without inflicting collateral damage from a reactive outburst. The feeling was acknowledged, but it wasn't put in charge. Now, turn this lens inward for a moment. Can you identify a specific emotion that often leads you to act in ways you later wish you hadn't? For many, it's the quick flash of defensiveness when receiving feedback, or the gnawing anxiety that leads to procrastination, or the sharp sting of jealousy that prompts a cynical remark. Whatever your particular trigger is, bring it to mind. Now, imagine applying this practice of detached observation the very next time it surfaces. Instead of that emotion immediately translating into action, a defensive retort, avoiding a task, a snide comment, you simply pause and name it. Silently tell yourself, "This is defensiveness," or "This is anxiety." That tiny gap of awareness is where your freedom lies. It creates just enough space for a question to form. Is acting on this feeling going to serve my long-term goals? Is it aligned with the person I want to be? This isn't about fighting the emotion. It's about understanding its message while refusing to let it write the script for your behavior. By detaching, you move from being a puppet of your passions to being the architect of your actions, building a life based on thoughtful choice rather than impulsive reaction. Many reactions stem from unmet desires or aversions. We lash out in frustration when a promotion we desperately wanted goes to someone else. We feel a pang of jealousy when a friend shares news of a success we crave for ourselves. We become anxious and irritable when life doesn't conform to our precise preferences. According to Stoic philosophy, these turbulent reactions are not caused by the events themselves, but by the intensity of our desires and our rigid aversions to their opposites. The path to mastering our reactions, therefore, lies not in trying to control the world to satisfy every want, but in bringing discipline to the wants themselves. This is the profound practice known as the discipline of desire. Epictetus offers what might be the most liberating instruction in all of Stoic thought. He tells us to make our number one desire simply this: to want only what is actually within our power. Everything else, he advises, we should regard as nothing to us. This is the ultimate strategy for minimizing frustration. When your deepest want is aligned with your own virtue, your own choices, and your own actions, things you absolutely can control, you virtually guarantee your own success. You want to act with integrity, so you do. You want to do your best work, so you do. You want to treat others with respect, so you do. These desires are fulfilled the moment you choose them. In this aligned state, external outcomes lose their power to trigger you because they were never the real object of your desire in the first place. Your satisfaction comes from your own conduct, not from the world's applause. A powerful and nearly universal example is the desire for approval. How much of our reactive behavior is driven by this deep-seated need to be liked, validated, and thought well of by others? We might agree to tasks we don't have time for, hesitate to voice a contrary opinion, or quickly back down from a stand we believe in, all for fear of disapproval. This people-pleasing is a reactive cycle. We are constantly scanning our social environment and adjusting our behavior to seek a reward, approval, that is completely outside our control. You cannot force someone to like you or think you're smart. The moment you make their approval your desire, you hand them the remote control to your emotional state. Epictetus would say you have enslaved yourself to their opinion. Now, imagine applying the discipline of desire to this. You consciously work to want only what is within your power, to act with honesty and integrity. You enter a meeting where you know your view will be unpopular. Your old desire for approval would have you biting your tongue, your anxiety rising as you try to guess what to say to be liked. Your new, disciplined desire has a different focus. You want only to express your perspective clearly and respectfully, something fully within your control. This shift changes everything. You are no longer reacting to the facial expressions in the room. You are acting from a core principle. If your view is rejected, you haven't failed because your goal wasn't to win the argument, it was to contribute virtuously to it. By letting go of the desire for a specific outcome, you gain composure, clarity, and a quiet confidence that is far more impressive than any attempt to people-please could ever be. This practice requires honest self-reflection. What desire most often leads you to react hastily in your own life? Is it the desire for comfort that makes you resent unexpected inconveniences? The desire for control that sparks anger when others don't do things your way? Or perhaps the desire for success that fuels anxiety when progress seems slow? Identify that specific desire and then apply the Stoic filter. How much of what I want here is actually within my power? You may find that your desire is fixated on an external result, a number in a bank account, a title on a business card, a certain reaction from another person. The discipline comes in consciously redirecting that desire inward toward the qualities and actions you can command. Instead of wanting the promotion, focus on wanting to do work that is truly deserving of it. Instead of wanting a conflict to disappear, focus on wanting to handle it with patience and wisdom. This realignment doesn't make you passive, it makes you powerfully active in the only arena where you are truly the master. Gratitude is a stoic practice for maintaining perspective, a powerful tool that directly counteracts our tendency toward negative and impulsive reactions. When we feel that surge of frustration or disappointment, it's almost always because our focus has narrowed onto what we lack, what's gone wrong, or how reality has failed to meet our expectations. Gratitude works by forcibly shifting that focus back onto what is present, what is working, and what we already possess. It is the conscious act of recognizing the good that exists within the current moment, thereby draining the power from the complaints and dissatisfactions that so often trigger our worst reactions. This isn't about slapping a happy face on a difficult situation. It's a disciplined reorientation of your attention toward assets rather than deficits. Seneca explored this idea deeply, particularly in his letters on the brevity of life. He observed that we are often so anxious for the future and so regretful of the past that we utterly fail to see the value of the present. He wrote, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future, not to amuse ourselves with either hopes or fears, but to rest satisfied with what we have, which is sufficient, for he that is so wants nothing." His point is that the practice of gratitude grounds us firmly in the now, which is the only time over which we have any direct influence. By finding sufficiency in the present, we inoculate ourselves against the restless desire for more or different that fuels so much of our reactive behavior. A mind focused on appreciation has little room for envy, resentment, or impatient frustration. Imagine a common modern scenario that typically sparks a negative reaction. You've been looking forward to a dinner with friends all week, a much-needed break from a stressful period. At the last minute, you get a text the plan is cancelled. The immediate, automatic reaction might be intense disappointment, even anger. You might complain, vent your frustration to someone else, or spiral into thoughts about how nothing ever works out. This reaction, while understandable, only serves to amplify your own suffering. Now apply the stoic practice of gratitude. Instead of focusing on the lost dinner, you consciously pivot your attention. You might feel gratitude for the sudden gift of free time, an entire evening you hadn't accounted for. You could use it to finally read that book, take a long bath, or simply enjoy a quiet night of rest. You might feel gratitude for the friends who, though they had to cancel, are still in your life. You could even feel gratitude for the comfort of your own home. The external event, the cancelled plan, remains unchanged, but your internal experience of it is transformed from one of lack to one of abundance. This shift in perspective prevents the negative reaction from ever taking hold, allowing you to navigate the change of plans with grace and even contentment. This practice is a skill that grows stronger with use, and you can cultivate it starting right now. The next time you feel that familiar prick of reactivity, the irritation in traffic, the impatience in a long line, the anxiety before a difficult task, pause and deliberately list 3 specific things you are genuinely grateful for in that very moment. They don't have to be monumental. It could be the warmth of the sun through the windshield, the functioning of your own healthy body as you stand waiting, or the simple fact that you have the capacity to learn and grow from the challenge ahead. This act is not a denial of difficulty, it is an affirmation of the broader context. It reminds you that even within a moment of frustration, there are elements of goodness and sufficiency. By making this a habitual response to life's minor irritations, You build a resilient mindset that is far less likely to be knocked off balance by larger setbacks, training yourself to always seek the solid ground of appreciation beneath the shifting sands of circumstance. Stoics ended each day by examining their actions and responses, a practice known as their evening review. This wasn't about self-criticism or dwelling on mistakes with regret. It was a disciplined and objective audit of their own behavior, a way to harvest wisdom from the events of the day. They understood that progress in virtue wasn't made in the heat of the moment, but in the quiet reflection that followed. It was in this space of calm assessment that they could truly learn, identifying the gaps between their Stoic ideals and their very human reactions, and then planning how to close those gaps tomorrow. Seneca, in his letters, provides a powerful blueprint for this practice. He describes how he would end his day by asking himself a series of probing questions. What bad habit have you cured today? He would ask. What fault have you resisted? In what respect are you better? This was his method of holding himself accountable. He would revisit his interactions, his thoughts, and his impulses, not to punish himself, but to understand himself. He believed that the sleep that follows this self-examination is more tranquil, and the following day is entered with a clearer intention, because you have actively learned from the one that just passed. You can bring this ancient practice into your modern life through a simple form of journaling. It doesn't require a leather-bound book or eloquent prose, just a few minutes of honest writing. The goal is to move beyond simply recording events and instead focus on your internal reactions to them. When you sit down tonight, ask yourself two fundamental questions about your day. First, what specific event triggered an immediate, heated reaction in me? Be precise. Was it the tone of an email, a comment from a coworker, the behavior of your children, or the slow-moving traffic? Second, and most importantly, what was the underlying judgment or story that fueled that reaction? Did you instantly interpret that email as a personal attack? Did you see your child's tantrum as a deliberate defiance rather than a need for connection? By identifying the trigger and then excavating the hidden judgment beneath it, you bring your automatic thought patterns into the light. Now take it one step further and ask the most constructive question of all. Having identified that pattern, how could I respond more wisely tomorrow? This is where you pre-script your virtue. If you know that critical feedback often triggers defensiveness, you can rehearse a new response. I will listen fully without interrupting, ask for clarification, and thank them for their perspective before I respond. If you know that rush hour traffic sparks irritation, you can plan a new protocol. I will use that time to listen to an audiobook I enjoy, accepting the delay as time for learning rather than a personal inconvenience. This turns your reflection from a passive review into an active training session for your future self. So, as you consider your own day, what did you react to today? And with the clarity of this moment, how could you choose to respond more wisely tomorrow? This nightly ritual is how you gradually rewire your instincts. It's the quiet, consistent work that transforms philosophy from an interesting idea into a lived reality, building a life where your reactions are less frequently something you need to review, and more often something you can be proud of. Marcus Aurelius spoke of retreating into your own mind for peace, a sanctuary no external event can invade without your permission. This idea forms the core of the Stoic concept of the inner citadel, a mental fortress of resilience, virtue, and unshakable calm that you build within yourself. Think of it not as a wall to hide behind, but as a stronghold of character that remains steadfast while the storms of life rage outside its walls. The stronger this inner fortress becomes, the less power external events have to trigger those immediate, heated reactions. You begin to experience chaos not as a personal threat, but as weather passing around a well-built structure. You notice the storm, you respect its force, but you are not defined by it. Imagine facing a situation that would typically send anyone into a tailspin, receiving harsh public criticism during a major presentation. The immediate, raw impulse is one of sheer panic. Your face flushes, your heart pounds, and your mind scrambles for a defensive comeback that will likely escalate the conflict. Now imagine you have been consciously building your inner citadel. In that critical moment, instead of reacting from that place of wounded ego, you consciously retreat inward. You access that cultivated space of calm. From within your citadel, you can observe the criticism not as a personal attack, but as mere information. You can ask from a place of genuine curiosity, is there any truth here that can help me improve? Or, what might be motivating this person's perspective? This allows you to respond with measured grace, perhaps saying, "That's a challenging perspective. I appreciate you pointing that out, and I'd value the chance to discuss your thoughts further after we conclude." Your composure isn't feigned. It's the natural result of being anchored in something far more solid than the opinion of others. This citadel is built brick by brick through daily practice. Every time you pause before reacting, you add a stone to its walls. Every time you question a knee-jerk judgment, you reinforce its foundations. Every time you choose a value-driven response over an emotional one, you raise its towers. The goal is to make this inner retreat so familiar that it becomes your default setting in times of stress. It is where you reconnect with your core principles, your integrity, your reason, your compassion, and decide how to act from that centered place rather than being tossed about by every external wave. Now take a moment to visualize your own inner citadel. What does it look like in your mind's eye? Is it an ancient stone fortress on a cliff, impervious to the crashing waves below? Or perhaps a serene, quiet garden within, untouched by the noise of the outside world? This is your personal refuge. The next time you feel turmoil rising, be it from a stressful news alert, a confrontational comment, or a personal disappointment, consciously picture yourself stepping inside this stronghold. From there, look out at the situation. How does it appear from this new, grounded vantage point? The event itself hasn't changed, but your relationship to it has been utterly transformed. You are no longer a victim of circumstance standing in the storm. You are the calm observer within the fortress, empowered to choose your response with wisdom and intention. This mental shift is the ultimate practice in reclaiming your peace, not by changing the world, but by fortifying the one thing you truly command, your inner world. Remembering that time is limited helps prioritize what deserves a response. This is the profound wisdom behind the Stoic practice of memento mori, the mindful reflection on our own mortality. Far from being a morbid fixation, this exercise is a powerful tool for clarity, a lens that brings what truly matters into sharp focus while making life's countless trivial irritations seem to fade into the background. When you consciously hold the awareness that your time is finite, you naturally become more selective about where you invest your emotional energy. A rude comment online, a perceived slight in a meeting, a driver cutting you off in traffic, these things don't disappear, but they lose their weight, their ability to command a reaction from you when viewed against the vast and sobering backdrop of a limited life. Marcus Aurelius, constantly reminding himself of this truth, wrote in his Meditations, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He wasn't suggesting we live in a state of fear, but rather that we use the awareness of life's brevity as a guiding principle for our actions and, most importantly, our reactions. It's a call to evaluate the true cost of our emotional expenditures. Is this argument, this resentment, this moment of frustration worth the irreplaceable seconds or minutes of my life that I am about to dedicate to it? When you measure a potential reaction against the yardstick of your mortality, the answer is often a clear and resounding no. Consider a practical, everyday example. You're at a family gathering and a relative makes a passive-aggressive comment about your career choices, something that would typically trigger a defensive and heated reply. The old pattern would be to engage, to argue, to try to prove your point, leaving you both frustrated and ruining the evening. But you pause and apply memento mori. You recognize that life is too short to spend this precious time with other loved ones present, locked in a bitter, unwinnable debate over something that ultimately doesn't define your worth. Instead of reacting to the provocation, you might simply offer a neutral response like, "I appreciate your concern," and gracefully change the subject to a more positive memory you share. You haven't conceded. You've chosen to prioritize peace and the enjoyment of the limited time you have with your family over the temporary satisfaction of winning a petty argument. You've traded a grudge for gratitude. This perspective invites a profound shift in how we move through our days. How would your reactions change if you fully embraced the limited time you have? The next time you feel the familiar surge of irritation begin to rise, take 1 second to ask that very question. Is this thing I'm about to react to worthy of my finite, precious attention? This simple mental checkpoint can stop a reactive cycle before it even begins, freeing up an immense amount of mental space and energy for the things that truly do deserve your response: meaningful work, deep conversations, acts of kindness, and simply appreciating the beauty of being alive. It is the ultimate filter for a life well lived, ensuring that your reactions are not wasted on the trivial but are reserved for the truly significant. The Stoics advise not just accepting but embracing fate, a concept they called amor fati, a Latin phrase that translates to a love of one's fate. This is the ultimate extension of all the practices we've explored. It moves beyond merely tolerating life's twists and turns to actively welcoming them, not as burdens to be endured, but as necessary and even beneficial components of your unique path. This mindset is the final, decisive blow against reactive struggle, because when you genuinely love what happens, there is simply nothing left to resist. You cease fighting reality and instead begin to flow with it, seeing every event, no matter how challenging, as raw material for your growth and character development. Epictetus presents this idea with stunning clarity, framing it as the ultimate expression of aligning your will with the nature of the universe. He said, "Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather, wish that everything happens just as it does, and you will be happy." This is the radical core of amor fati. It's the conscious decision to want the very thing that is already happening, precisely because it is happening. This doesn't mean you become passive or stop working toward goals. It means you drop the internal struggle against the current circumstances, freeing up all the energy you once wasted on resentment and redirecting it toward constructive action within your new reality. Your happiness becomes decoupled from specific outcomes and is instead rooted in your own virtuous response to any outcome. Consider the profound application of this in a major life event like an unexpected job loss. The immediate, reactive response is often one of shock, fear, anger, and a sense of personal failure. You might spend days or weeks railing against the unfairness, obsessing over what you could have done differently, and drowning in anxiety about the future. This resistance creates immense suffering on top of the practical challenge. Now apply amor fati. This begins with a conscious reframing. You might say to yourself, "I embrace this job loss. I do not know why it has happened, but I choose to love it and find the opportunity within it." This shift in perspective doesn't magically solve your financial situation, but it completely transforms your internal experience of it. From this place of acceptance, you can ask empowering questions. What has this situation freed me to pursue that I was too comfortable to attempt before? What skills can I now develop? What does this reveal about what I truly want from my career? The event is reframed from a catastrophe into a catalyst. The energy that was going into resistance is now channeled into resumes, networking, learning, and perhaps even exploring a long-dormant dream of starting a business. Now, bring this transformative idea into your own recent experience. Can you identify an event from the past weeks or months that you instinctively resisted? Perhaps it was a minor plan that fell through, a project that failed, or a disagreement that created tension. Revisit that moment in your mind. How did your resistance and struggle against the reality of it shape your emotional state and your subsequent actions? Now experiment with the practice of Amor Fati. Imagine if, in that very moment, you had consciously chosen to embrace that event exactly as it unfolded. How would that internal shift have changed your feelings? What new possibilities for action might have become visible to you? Embracing fate is not about resignation. It is about claiming a profound kind of freedom. The freedom to find meaning and purpose in every single moment of your life, especially the difficult ones, understanding that they are not obstacles on your path, but are, in fact, essential parts of the path itself. Stoicism encourages emulating wise individuals, not out of blind idolatry, but as a practical method for cultivating our own virtue. We are surrounded by countless examples of reactive behavior, from dramatic headlines to heated social media exchanges, making it difficult to even envision a different way of being. By consciously studying historical and contemporary figures who exemplify Stoic composure, we provide our minds with a powerful template for what a measured response actually looks like in practice. It's like having a mental library of calm to consult when our own emotional storms begin to brew, offering a clear alternative to the impulsive patterns we're trying to overcome. The Stoics themselves were keen students of character. Seneca frequently wrote of his profound admiration for Cotto the Younger, a Roman senator known for his unwavering integrity and unshakable composure even in the face of extreme political pressure and personal threat. Seneca didn't just praise Cotto from a distance, he actively used him as a benchmark for his own conduct. When faced with a provocation, he would ask himself how Cotto might have borne such an insult or navigated such a conflict. This practice allowed him to bypass his own ego and immediate emotions, accessing a higher standard of behavior through the example of someone he respected. He wasn't trying to become a carbon copy of Cotto. He was using that idealized model to draw out the same virtues that existed within himself. You can apply this same principle in your own life with a simple yet profoundly effective mental exercise. The next time you feel that familiar surge of stress, perhaps when a colleague unfairly dismisses your idea or you're stuck in an endless queue, pause for just a second and ask yourself, what would Marcus Aurelius do in this moment? Or substitute any figure, real or fictional, who represents calm mastery to you. This isn't about magical thinking, it's a cognitive shortcut that forces a perspective shift. It immediately pulls you out of the narrow, heated focus on the problem and forces you to view the situation from a more detached, principled vantage point. You might instantly realize that a man who governed an empire amid plague and war would not be derailed by a rude email, and that realization alone can drain the situation of its perceived urgency and power. This practice moves philosophy from the abstract into the intensely practical. It provides a specific script when our own minds go blank with anger or anxiety. So consider who embodies that calm mastery for you. It might be a historical leader like Marcus Aurelius, a modern figure known for their poise under pressure, or even a personal mentor, a family member, or a friend who always seems to respond with grace. Once you have that model in mind, go beyond mere admiration. Actively study them. If they've written letters or speeches, read them not just for information but for their character. If you know them personally, observe the specific language they use when challenged or how they carry themselves during stress. What specific phrases do they use to de-escalate tension? How do they frame setbacks? Your goal is to collect a toolkit of attitudes and actions that you can adapt and make your own, building your capacity for wise response one observed virtue at a time. A cluttered life leads to cluttered reactions. Think about it. When your physical space is overflowing with unused possessions, your calendar is packed with unnecessary commitments, and your mind is saturated with trivial desires, there is simply no room for a thoughtful response. Every new stimulus, every minor inconvenience, becomes the straw that breaks the camel's back, triggering a snap judgment or an emotional outburst because your mental bandwidth is already maxed out. This is where Stoic minimalism offers a profound solution, not as a trendy design aesthetic, but as a deliberate practice of removing the non-essential to make space for what truly matters, your virtue and your reasoned choice. Seneca, in his letters, powerfully captured the psychological weight of excess. He wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." His insight goes far beyond material wealth. He is pointing to the constant state of want, the endless chasing of more approval, more comfort, more stuff, more status, as the true source of our inner poverty and reactivity. Each unchecked desire is like another open tab in your mind's browser. Each possession is another item on your mental maintenance list. Each commitment is another claim on your attention. This constant drain leaves you with depleted resources, so when a genuine challenge arises, you have no reserves left. You react from a place of exhaustion and scarcity, rather than responding from a place of abundance and clarity. We can see this play out in a very practical area, our daily schedules. Many of us live in a state of chronic overwhelm, rushing from one obligation to the next, perpetually behind, making hasty decisions just to keep up. This is a cluttered life in motion. Now, apply the Stoic minimalist approach. This involves a ruthless audit of your time. Go through your calendar and ask the Stoic question of each commitment. Is this essential? Does this activity contribute to my core values and my growth? Or is it merely a distraction, a people-pleasing gesture, or a habit I haven't questioned? Decluttering your schedule might mean saying no to a social event you feel obligated to attend but truly dread. It might mean blocking out an hour each day for focused work or quiet reflection instead of leaving your time open to the demands of others. By creating this white space, you build buffers into your life. When an unexpected problem pops up, it doesn't crash your entire system because you have the margin to handle it. You can pause, assess, and choose a response instead of being forced into a panicked reaction by the sheer pressure of your own overcrowded life. This principle extends to our digital spaces as well. A cluttered inbox and a constant barrage of notifications create an environment perfectly designed for reactive living. Every ping is a potential interruption, pulling your focus away from your priorities and training you to respond to the urgent instead of the important. Simplifying this digital noise by turning off non-essential alerts, unsubscribing from promotional emails, and scheduling specific times to check messages is a modern application of Stoic minimalism. It reclaims your attention, the most precious resource you have, and returns it to you so you can spend it intentionally. So, where can you begin? The goal isn't to sell all your belongings and move into a bare room, but to start with a single, manageable area. Identify one domain in your life that feels unnecessarily complex and feels like a regular source of low-grade stress or reactivity. Perhaps it's your morning routine, which is so rushed that a misplaced set of keys ruins your entire mood. Could you simplify it by preparing your clothes and lunch the night before? Maybe it's your financial life with numerous subscriptions and impulsive spending habits that create anxiety. Could you cancel one unused service and create a simple spending plan? Or perhaps it's your social media consumption, which fills your mind with comparisons and outrage. Could you curate your feeds or set a strict time limit? By deliberately simplifying just one area, you create a small pocket of calm and control. You prove to yourself that you are not at the mercy of your circumstances. This small victory creates mental space, and in that space, you find the clarity to respond wisely rather than react hastily, building momentum toward a life of greater intention and far less unnecessary friction. Stoics practice stating facts without adding emotional labels, a powerful technique for dismantling the automatic emotional charge we attach to events. This exercise, often called objective description, forces a crucial separation between what actually happened and the story we instinctively tell ourselves about it. We don't react to the raw event, we react to our interpretation, our judgment of that event. By training ourselves to describe situations in plain, neutral language, we effectively strip away the layers of meaning that trigger our reactive emotions in the first place. It's a way of hitting the pause button on your internal narrative and examining the facts before your feelings have a chance to run away with you. This practice is deeply rooted in the writings of Marcus Aurelius, who constantly reminded himself to see things as they are, not as they are judged to be. He advised himself to strip away the legend that encrusts an event, urging a clear-eyed view of reality. He wrote about the importance of discarding value-laden words like terrible or unfair, and instead looking at the core components of any situation. This isn't about becoming cold or unfeeling. It's about achieving clarity. By removing the judgment, you remove the fuel for the emotional fire, allowing you to see the situation for what it truly is, a collection of neutral facts, and then choose your response from a place of reason rather than reflex. Consider a common example that might trigger a reactive spiral. You walk into a room and your partner is sitting on the couch, looking at their phone. They don't look up or acknowledge you. The immediate, judgment-laden interpretation might be, "They're ignoring me, they're angry about something, what did I do wrong?" This story is instantly upsetting and would likely lead to a reactive response, perhaps a defensive or accusatory question. Now, apply the Stoic practice of objective description. Strip away the judgment and state only the observable facts. The objective description would be, "I entered the room, my partner is seated on the couch." Their eyes are focused on their phone screen. They have not spoken or made eye contact since I entered. Do you feel the difference? The second description is neutral. It contains no assumed intent, no mind reading, no emotional label. It simply reports the data. From this calm, factual place, you can now choose a rational response. Instead of an accusation, you might simply say, "Hey, how's it going?" and discover that they were simply engrossed in an article from a friend or managing a stressful work email, and their lack of acknowledgement had nothing to do with you at all. You just avoided an unnecessary conflict by mastering your perception. This skill requires conscious practice, as our minds are wired to jump to conclusions. To build this mental muscle, try a simple exercise with a recent event from your own life. Think of a minor incident that triggered a flash of irritation or anxiety. It could be a terse email from a colleague, a driver cutting you off in traffic, or a friend canceling plans at the last minute. First, recall how you described the event to yourself in the moment, noting all the emotional judgments you attached to it. Then rewrite the story using only objective, observable facts. Instead of, "My boss sent a nasty, critical email," try, "My boss's email contained 3 sentences. The first sentence questioned the data in my report. The second suggested a different methodology. The third requested a meeting. Instead of, "That reckless jerk cut me off." Try, "A blue sedan moved from the center lane into my lane, requiring me to press my brake pedal." By repeatedly practicing this shift in language, you train your brain to default to observation rather than evaluation, creating that vital space between an event and your emotional response. This space is where your freedom and your mastery truly live. Patience is not passive waiting but active self-control, a disciplined commitment to preserving your inner peace regardless of external delays or provocations. The Stoics saw patience not as a weakness or a form of resignation, but as one of the highest expressions of strength. It's the conscious decision to endure discomfort without surrendering your composure, to tolerate inconvenience without letting it dictate your emotional state. This kind of patience creates the essential buffer that allows reason to override impulse, ensuring your actions align with your principles rather than your passing irritations. It is, in essence, the practical application of the pause we've been discussing, the lived experience of that gap between what happens and how you choose to respond. Epictetus, who began his life as a slave and understood hardship intimately, framed endurance as a fundamental component of a good life. He taught his students that our capacity to bear life's inevitable annoyances with grace is a direct measure of our philosophical progress. He said, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." This perspective reframes patience from a test of will into an opportunity for gratitude. The delay, the obstacle, the wait, it's not a theft of your time, but a chance to practice the very virtues you're trying to cultivate. Every moment spent waiting is a moment you can choose to spend in frustration or in calm observation. Consider the modern test of standing in a painfully slow-moving line at the grocery store. The reactive mind immediately jumps to judgments. "This is a waste of my time. Why are there never enough cashiers? This always happens to me." This internal narrative of injustice fuels agitation, visible in sighs, eye rolls, and a constant checking of the phone. Now apply Stoic patience. You acknowledge the reality the line is moving slowly. This is a fact, but you refuse to add the judgment that it is a personal affront or a catastrophe. Instead, you use the imposed pause actively. You might observe your surroundings with curiosity. You might take 10 deep breaths to center yourself, or you might simply stand there and practice being present without needing to do anything. By not resisting the weight, you neutralize its power to irritate you. You transform a passive experience of frustration into an active exercise in self-mastery. This practice extends far beyond trivial cues into the heart of our most challenging relationships and ambitions. We often lose patience with people when they don't meet our expectations, or with ourselves when progress toward a goal seems agonizingly slow. In these moments, impatience is really a form of resistance to reality. We are demanding that the world, others, and ourselves conform to our personal timeline. Stoic patience asks us to release this demand and to work diligently without being attached to the immediate result. It is the understanding that some things, whether it's a person's growth, the success of a project, or the mastery of a skill, unfold on their own schedule and cannot be rushed without causing damage. So, where does impatience most frequently hijack your peace? Is it during your daily commute, in conversations with a loved one who holds different views, or when you are diligently working toward a goal that seems forever out of reach? Identify that trigger and see it for what it is, a perfect training ground. The cultivation of patience begins with this awareness. The next time you feel that familiar surge of restlessness, name it. Say to yourself, this is a moment to practice patience. Then, consciously redirect your focus from what you are waiting for to what you can do while you wait. Can you practice observation? Can you practice gratitude for something else in this moment? Can you simply practice bearing the discomfort without complaint? Each time you do this, you are not just waiting, you are building the resilient, enduring strength of character that the Stoics believed was the true mark of a wise and free individual. Mastering reactions requires building new habits because our default responses are themselves just deeply ingrained patterns of behavior. Every time you've immediately snapped back in an argument or felt your stomach clench at a piece of bad news, you were following a neural pathway that has been carved deep through years of repetition. The good news is that neuroplasticity means we are always capable of carving new pathways, and this is where Stoic practice transforms from a conscious effort into a seamless part of your character. It's about moving from having to think about your response to simply living it. This transformative process was perfectly articulated long before modern neuroscience, when the philosopher Aristotle observed that we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act but a habit. The Stoics wholeheartedly embraced this view, understanding that a virtuous life wasn't about grand, one-off gestures of wisdom, but the quiet accumulation of small, consistent choices. Every time you consciously choose to pause before responding, you are not just navigating a single situation better, you are actively building the habit of composure. You are quite literally rewiring your brain to default to a state of considered awareness rather than reactive panic. Consider the tangible example of incorporating a daily mindfulness exercise. Imagine committing to just 5 minutes each morning where you sit quietly and focus solely on the sensation of your breath. For the first few days, your mind will wander constantly to your to-do list, your worries, a song stuck in your head. This is completely normal. But each time you gently guide your attention back to your breath without judgment, you are performing a repetition. You are strengthening your mental muscle. After several weeks of this consistent practice, you might find yourself in a stressful work meeting, and without even consciously deciding to, you take a deep, centering breath as your colleague begins to criticize your idea. The habit you built in the quiet of your morning has now become an automatic resource in the chaos of your day, reducing your reactive stress without you having to force it. This is the ultimate goal, to make your Stoic tools so familiar that they are accessible even under pressure. It's like a musician who practices scales daily so that during a complex performance, their fingers know where to go without conscious thought. Your daily practice of pausing, of questioning your judgments, of reframing obstacles, is you practicing your scales. You are building a library of calm responses so that when life inevitably throws a challenge your way, you don't have to search for the right reaction. It simply emerges because it has become the most well-worn path in your mind. To start this process yourself, I encourage you to choose just one single Stoic habit to focus on for the next week. Don't try to overhaul your entire life at once. Perhaps your habit will be to implement the nightly review we discussed, spending 5 minutes each evening reflecting on where you reacted well and where you could improve. Maybe it will be the practice of objective description, consciously stripping the emotional language from one frustrating event each day. Or it could be as simple as placing a reminder on your phone that pops up 3 times a day with the question, "What is within my control right now?" The specific habit matters less than the consistency of the practice. By dedicating yourself to this one small thing, you lay the first brick of a new foundation, proving to yourself that you are not beholden to your old patterns and that with deliberate repetition, A life of greater peace and mastery is not a distant ideal, but a habit waiting to be built. Stoics categorize health, wealth, and reputation as indifference, a term that often causes confusion in our modern context. It doesn't mean we should be indifferent toward them in the sense of not caring at all. Rather, it means they hold no inherent moral value. They are not good or bad in and of themselves. What truly matters, the only genuine good, is our own virtuous character, our ability to use reason, act with justice, courage, and wisdom, regardless of the external circumstances we find ourselves in. An indifferent is simply a tool. Its moral value is assigned solely by how we choose to use it. Wealth can be used generously or greedily. A good reputation can be the result of integrity or deception. Even poor health can be met with courage and patience or with bitterness and despair. The external thing itself is neutral. The virtue or vice lies in our voluntary response to it. This philosophy becomes critically important when we examine our reactive patterns. The overwhelming majority of our impulsive reactions are triggered not by threats to our virtue, but by threats to our indifference. We feel a surge of anger when our wealth is threatened by an unexpected bill. We experience crippling anxiety when our reputation is on the line before a big presentation. We fall into deep sadness when our health fails. In each case, we have mistakenly assigned supreme importance to something that is ultimately outside our complete control. We have tied our inner peace and self-worth to the fluctuating, unpredictable nature of external events, which is a recipe for constant emotional turmoil. This misplaced valuation is the root of our attachment to favorable outcomes and our aversion to unfavorable ones, creating a volatile emotional pendulum that swings with every change in fortune. The Stoic teacher Epictetus offers the clearest guidance on how to break this cycle. He famously said, "Remember, it is not the person who insults you or attacks you who harms you, but the view you take of these things as being harmful." His instruction was to immediately remind yourself that what has disturbed you is not the event itself, but your own judgment about it. If someone criticizes you, the criticism is just sound waves or marks on a screen. It is your internal agreement with that criticism or your fierce resistance to it that causes the emotional distress. By ceasing to believe that the external event has the power to harm your core self, your character, you effectively disarm it. You can observe it, learn from it if useful, and then let it pass by without it dictating your emotional state or your next action. We can see this play out in two opposite but equally powerful examples: praise and criticism. Imagine receiving lavish, glowing praise for a project you completed. The reactive, non-stoic response might be to swell with pride, to become attached to this positive feedback, and to start making future decisions based on a desire to receive more of it. Your happiness becomes dependent on the continued approval of others. Conversely, imagine receiving harsh, perhaps even unfair, criticism. The reactive response is defensiveness, anger, and a feeling of being personally diminished. Now apply the Stoic view of indifference. Both the praise and the criticism are external events outside your control. They are neither good nor bad. Your task is to receive both with the same balanced detachment. You can accept the praise graciously without letting it inflate your ego, and you can accept the criticism calmly without letting it crush your spirit. You can sift through both for any nuggets of useful truth to aid your growth, while gracefully discarding the rest as mere opinion. Your self-worth remains anchored in your own knowledge of your efforts and your integrity, not in the ever-changing opinions of the world. This invites a moment of honest self-reflection. What external circumstance or possession do you, in your daily life, treat as overly important? Is it your job title, the number in your bank account, the number of likes on a social media post, or the approval of a particular family member. Identify that one thing whose fluctuation causes a disproportionate reaction in you. Now, consciously practice seeing it as an indifferent. This doesn't mean you have to quit your job or give away your money. It means changing your internal relationship with it. Remind yourself that while it may be preferred, it's perfectly natural to want health and comfort. It is not essential to your ability to live a good and virtuous life. Your character can shine through in poverty or in wealth, in sickness or in health. By loosening your grip on its importance, you are not losing anything of true value. You are gaining an immense freedom from the emotional roller coaster it once forced you to ride, allowing you to engage with the world from a place of stable choice rather than fragile dependency. Courage is acting rightly despite the fear you feel. It is not the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward in alignment with your principles even when every instinct screams to retreat. The Stoics placed immense value on this virtue, viewing it not as a reckless daring, but as a calm, reasoned persistence in the face of anything that would seek to derail your tranquility or your integrity. For them, courage was the indispensable guardian of all the other virtues. Without it, your wisdom might remain unspoken, your justice might go undefended, and your self-control might crumble under pressure. This specific form of bravery is about proceeding with clear-eyed reason rather than fleeing from discomfort, understanding that the pain of temporary difficulty is far preferable to the long-term suffering of a neglected duty or a compromised character. Seneca, in his writings, frequently explored the nature of true bravery, especially in his essay on Providence. He argues that adversity is not something to be lamented, but rather the very training ground that allows courage to develop and prove its mettle. He uses a powerful analogy, stating, "Fire tests gold, adversity tests brave men." His point is that comfort and ease reveal very little about a person's strength. It is only when we are tested by hardship, criticism, or fear that we have the opportunity to demonstrate what we're truly made of. A ship is not praised for surviving a calm voyage across a placid harbor. It is built and commended for its ability to withstand the violent storms of the open ocean. In the same way, Seneca suggests that a life without any challenges is a life without the chance to practice and display the courage that lies within you. This reframes adversity from a punishment to be avoided into an invitation to grow stronger. We can see this principle in action with a deeply relatable scenario: the need to have a difficult but necessary conversation. Perhaps a close friend has been acting in a way that hurts you, or a family member consistently oversteps a boundary. The reactive, fear-based response is almost always avoidance. We tell ourselves it's not a big deal, we make excuses for their behavior, or we simply change the subject whenever the issue arises. This avoidance is a flight from discomfort, and it provides a temporary sense of relief. But it comes at a tremendous long-term cost. The problem festers, resentment builds, and the relationship slowly erodes from the inside. The Stoic, armed with courage, makes a different choice. They acknowledge the fear, the anxiety about causing conflict, the worry about being misunderstood, the sheer awkwardness of the moment, and they proceed anyway. They prepare by focusing on their intention, not to win an argument or assign blame, but to restore honesty and health to the relationship. They might plan to say, "I value our friendship too much to let this go unspoken. When X happens, I feel Y. I wanted to talk to you about it so we can understand each other better." This approach, grounded in reason and care, is an act of courage that honors the relationship far more than avoidance ever could. Now, bring this into the landscape of your own life. Is there a specific fear you have been systematically avoiding? It might not be a conversation. It could be the fear of applying for a new job because you dread rejection, or the fear of a medical checkup because of what you might learn, or even the fear of a social event where you won't know anyone. Identify that one thing your instincts consistently tell you to postpone or flee. Once you have it clearly in mind, take the next step beyond mere identification. Formulate a simple, single plan for a courageous response. Don't aim for a grand, sweeping gesture. Courage is built in small, consistent actions. If your fear is the job application, your courageous act is not to send out 100 resumes today. It is to spend 20 minutes this evening researching one company and drafting a single paragraph of a cover letter. If your fear is the doctor's appointment, your courageous act is to pick up the phone and simply schedule it. By breaking the overwhelming fear into a manageable, reasoned action, you dismantle its power. You are not erasing the fear, but you are choosing to act rightly in spite of it, proving to yourself that you are the one in command of your actions. Stoicism teaches understanding others' perspectives to respond wisely, a practice deeply rooted in the concept of sympatheia. This profound idea reminds us that we are all connected, all part of a shared human experience, and that by genuinely seeking to comprehend the motives and struggles of those around us, we dissolve the barriers that so often lead to conflict. This isn't about condoning poor behavior or becoming a pushover. It's about accessing a higher level of understanding that allows you to respond from a place of clarity rather than react from a place of wounded pride or personal offense. When you make the effort to see the world through another person's eyes, you are not weakening your position. You are arming yourself with the most powerful tool for true conflict resolution. Marcus Aurelius consistently reinforced this principle in his private writings, offering himself gentle but firm reminders about the shared nature of humanity. He would counsel himself to approach even the most difficult people with a sense of compassionate inquiry, writing lines such as, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they cannot tell good from evil." This was not a cynical view, it was a profoundly empathetic one. He was reminding himself that harmful actions almost always stem from a place of internal confusion, ignorance, or pain. The person who is rude, dismissive, or aggressive is likely suffering from their own misguided judgments and is lashing out from that place of inner turmoil. Recognizing this fundamental truth allows you to separate the person from their action, to see the human being behind the hurtful behavior, which completely changes the dynamic of the interaction. Imagine a practical scenario that unfolds in countless workplaces and homes. Your manager sends you a terse, critical email about a project you've been pouring your heart into, copying several other team members. The immediate, raw reaction is one of defensiveness and anger. Your heart rate spikes and your fingers itch to type out a sharp justification or an equally terse reply. This is the moment where sympatheia becomes your strategic advantage. Instead of firing back, you pause. You consciously engage your curiosity. You might ask yourself, what kind of pressure is my manager under from their boss? Could they be having an exceptionally stressful day, dealing with pressures I know nothing about? Is it possible this blunt email was written in a hurry between meetings and lacks the tone they would normally use? By asking these questions, you are not excusing the poor communication, but you are understanding its context. This understanding creates a space for a calm, professional response. You might reply, "Thank you for the feedback. I understand this is a high-priority project. I'd appreciate the chance to walk you through my process and discuss how we can align on the next steps." This approach to escalates demonstrates maturity and often leads to a more productive conversation than any defensive retort ever could. Now, apply this lens to your own experiences. How might seeing a situation from another's view change your reaction? Think of a recent conflict, even a minor one. Perhaps a service worker was short with you, or a family member forgot an important commitment. Your initial interpretation might have been personal. They were rude to me, or they don't care enough to remember. Now, deliberately generate alternative, empathetic explanations. Maybe the server is on their feet for a double shift, dealing with difficult customers all day, and their feet are aching. Perhaps your family member is so overwhelmed with their own anxieties that their memory is failing them. When you make this mental shift, your anger often melts into a sense of connection or even compassion. The event remains the same, but your emotional response to it transforms, freeing you from the burden of resentment and allowing you to interact with the world from a place of greater peace and wisdom. This practice of empathetic reframing is one of the most effective ways to short-circuit reactive anger before it ever takes hold, replacing it with a response that fosters understanding rather than fuels conflict. Many reactions stem from expectations not met. We build intricate pictures in our minds of how a day should unfold, how people should behave, or how a project should be received. And when reality inevitably diverges from that perfect mental blueprint, we experience a jarring internal conflict. This gap between expectation and reality is the breeding ground for frustration, anger, and disappointment, all emotions that prime us for a reactive outburst. The Stoics identified this habit of attaching our happiness to specific, predetermined outcomes as a major source of self-inflicted turmoil, and they offered a powerful antidote: the deliberate management of our expectations through a practice of realistic anticipation and acceptance. Seneca delves deeply into this in his letters, advising us to mentally rehearse life's uncertainties so they lose their power to shock us. He suggests that we should not only anticipate potential setbacks, but also periodically simulate them in our minds, not to live in fear, but to build resilience. He writes, "What is quite unlooked for is more crushing in its effect, and unexpectedness adds to the weight of a disaster. This is a reason for ensuring that nothing ever takes us by surprise." We should project our thoughts ahead of us at every turn and have in mind every possible eventuality instead of only the usual course of events. His point is that by expecting challenges as a natural part of the human experience, we inoculate ourselves against the element of surprise that so often triggers a volatile reaction. When you have already considered that a plan might fail, a friend might cancel, or a criticism might come, its arrival is not a catastrophic surprise but a manageable event that you are psychologically prepared to handle with composure. Consider the simple, universal example of your daily commute. If you leave the house with the rigid expectation that the traffic will be clear and your drive will take exactly 20 minutes, you are setting yourself up for reactive frustration. Every red light becomes a personal affront, every slow-moving vehicle an injustice that sparks irritation and stress. Your entire mood for the morning becomes hostage to the behavior of thousands of other commuters, something entirely outside your control. Now apply the Stoic adjustment. You check the traffic report before you leave and see there's a 15-minute delay. You adjust your expectation accordingly. You now anticipate the slowdown. This simple mental shift changes everything. You leave 10 minutes earlier, you put on a podcast you enjoy, and you navigate the congestion not as an emergency, but as a predicted part of your journey. The traffic itself hasn't changed, but your suffering has vanished because your expectation was aligned with reality. You've moved from resisting what is to accepting it and planning within it, which is the very essence of a proactive rather than a reactive life. This practice extends far beyond traffic into every corner of our lives. We often carry silent, unspoken expectations into our relationships, expecting our partner to intuitively know our needs, our friends to always be available, our colleagues to share our exact standards. When these invisible contracts are broken, we feel personally wronged and react with hurt or accusation. The Stoic approach involves bringing these hidden expectations into the light of day, examining them for rationality, and then either communicating them clearly or, more often, releasing them entirely as unrealistic demands on other autonomous human beings. Take a moment to turn this lens inward. Can you identify one specific expectation you frequently hold that reliably leads to a feeling of reactive upset? Perhaps it's the expectation that your work should always be recognized and praised, so you feel a sting of resentment when a contribution goes unnoticed. Maybe it's the expectation that your home should remain perfectly tidy, so you feel immediate irritation when a family member leaves a mess. Or it could be the expectation that your own progress toward a goal should be linear and swift, so you spiral into self-criticism at the first sign of a setback. Pinpoint that one expectation. Now apply the Stoic recalibration. What would it mean to release the tight grip on that specific outcome? How could you prepare your mind to accept a different result with grace? By loosening your attachment to how you think things should be, you open yourself to engaging with things as they are, and from that place of acceptance, your responses become measured, effective, and free from the turmoil of disappointed hopes. Stoic joy comes from virtue, not external validation. It's a profound shift from seeking happiness in the world's applause to cultivating an unshakable source of contentment within your own character. This joy isn't a fleeting emotion dependent on good news or favorable circumstances. It's a deep and steady satisfaction that arises from knowing you are living with integrity, courage, and wisdom, regardless of what is happening around you. When your sense of worth is internally generated, you become immunized against the constant ups and downs of external fortune. A promotion doesn't make you a better person, just as a failure doesn't diminish your core value. Your happiness is no longer a puppet on a string, jerked about by every passing event or opinion. This is the essence of self-reliance that the Stoics championed. By reducing our dependency on things outside our control, we simultaneously minimize the triggers that cause reactive behavior. Think about it. If you don't desperately need someone's approval, their criticism loses its power to wound you. If you aren't clinging to a specific material possession, its loss, while inconvenient, cannot devastate you. This self-containment is the ultimate freedom. It allows you to engage with the world from a place of abundance and choice, rather than from a place of neediness and lack. You interact with others not to extract validation from them, but to connect and share from your own already full cup. Epictetus, who began his life as a slave and understood true powerlessness, became one of history's greatest teachers on this inner freedom. He stated with unwavering clarity, "Happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of one principle. Some things are within our control and some things are not." He then goes even further, arguing that if you place your happiness in the hands of externals, other people's opinions, your wealth, your status, you have effectively made yourself their slave. You have handed them the remote control to your emotional state. His solution is as radical as it is liberating. Make your sole desire the cultivation of your own reasoned choice and virtuous character. Anchor your happiness there, in the one place that is truly your own, and you will never be disappointed. We can see this principle play out in a very modern arena, our relationship with social media. Imagine you spend time crafting a post you're genuinely proud of. It might be a thoughtful opinion, a personal achievement, or a creative project. You share it and then silence. The likes are slow to come. The reactive, validation-seeking mind immediately spirals into doubt. Was it not good enough? Does nobody agree? Maybe I should delete it. Your entire mood becomes contingent on the digital approval of others. Now apply the Stoic ideal of self-sufficient joy. The act of creation itself, the effort and honesty you poured into that post, is where the virtue lies. That is entirely within your control and is already a complete success, regardless of external metrics. The sharing is an offering, not a plea for validation. If it resonates with others, that's a pleasant bonus. If it doesn't, your sense of accomplishment remains intact and unshaken. You feel fulfilled by the doing, not by the reception. This invites a moment of honest self-assessment. Where do you currently seek validation externally, and how might you begin to find that same sense of assurance within yourself? Perhaps you feel a pang of anxiety if your partner doesn't affirm a decision you've made, leaving you questioning your own judgment. Maybe you measure your professional worth by your job title or annual salary, rather than by the quality of your work and your integrity in doing it. Or it could be that you constantly compare your life to the curated highlights of others online, feeling a sense of lack instead of appreciating your own unique journey. Identify that external source you've been relying on. Now consider how you might redirect that search inward. Instead of waiting for a compliment, could you practice acknowledging your own efforts? Rather than seeking permission, could you learn to trust your own reasoned choices? This process of internal validation is a muscle that grows stronger with use, building a resilient and self-directed character that finds its joy not in what it receives from the world, but in what it brings to it. Today's world constantly demands immediate reactions, especially through the digital devices we carry everywhere. Every ping, buzz, and flash is designed to hijack our attention, triggering a dopamine-driven loop that pulls us out of the present moment and into a state of perpetual responsiveness. This environment is the ultimate test of our Stoic practice, turning our phones and computers into modern-day arenas where we can practice virtue amidst digital gladiatorial combat. The principles we've discussed are not ancient relics. They are vital survival tools for navigating an attention economy purpose built to exploit our psychological vulnerabilities. Seneca's wisdom on avoiding noise and clutter feels astonishingly prophetic when applied to our current digital landscape. He warned against the dangers of being constantly occupied and scattered, writing, "The mind must be given relaxation. It will rise improved and sharper after a good break." Just as rich fields must not be forced, for they will quickly lose their fertility. If never given a break, so constant effort will sap our mental vigor. He was speaking of social engagements and busy work in ancient Rome, but his words perfectly describe the cognitive toll of endless scrolling, notification checking, and multitasking. This isn't mere distraction. It's a fragmentation of the self that makes the pause between stimulus and response vanish entirely. Our devices engineer away the very gap where our freedom resides. Consider the common scenario of receiving a provocative or critical message, perhaps in a group chat or on a social media post. The immediate, raw impulse is to fire back a defensive or equally sharp retort. The digital medium amplifies this reactivity, offering the illusion of a private conversation while often having a public or semi-public audience. This is where you consciously apply your Stoic training. Instead of your fingers moving to type immediately, you enact a digital process. You close the app, you put the phone down, perhaps even in another room. You create physical and mental space between the triggering message and your response. In that space, you engage your rational mind. You might ask the Stoic questions: is this truly an attack, or is it poorly worded feedback? What would a measured response look like that defends my principles without escalating conflict? By the time you return to the device, the initial heat of the emotion has often cooled, allowing you to craft a reply that is purposeful rather than punitive. You might choose not to respond at all, understanding that some provocations are designed for engagement and are best met with silence. This practice extends beyond reactive messages to the very architecture of our digital lives. Encouraging viewers to set deliberate boundaries with technology is a practical application of the Stoic dichotomy of control. You cannot control the design of apps that are engineered to be addictive, but you can absolutely control your relationship with them. This might mean turning off all non-essential notifications, a simple act that reclaims your attention from the whims of every app developer. It could involve designating specific phone-free hours each day, perhaps during your morning routine or the first hour after returning home from work, to ensure you are fully present in your physical environment. Another powerful boundary is creating a ritual around checking email or social media, rather than leaving it open as a constant background tab. By batching this consumption into defined windows, you transform it from a reactive habit into an intentional act. These boundaries aren't about rejecting technology, they are about using it as a tool for your benefit, rather than allowing yourself to be used as a resource for its engagement metrics. In doing so, you actively construct the digital space for reflection that is essential for living a considered, virtuous life in the 21st century. Mastering reactions is a lifelong practice, not a destination you arrive at one day and then simply remain. This is a crucial reframing because the pursuit of Stoic ideals can sometimes feel daunting, as if we are failing every time we fall short of that perfect, unshakable composure. But the goal was never perfection, it was progress. The ancient Stoics themselves spoke of the Prokopton, the person who is making progress, who is on the path. This is what we are all striving to be. Every single day presents a new series of tests, a fresh curriculum for your character. Some days you will pass with flying colors, responding to provocation with grace and to bad news with steady reason. Other days you will snap at a loved one or succumb to anxiety about a future you cannot control. These moments are not failures in the grand scheme of your journey. They are the essential data points for your growth. They are the repetitions in your mental gym, showing you precisely where your weaknesses lie so you can focus your training there. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, despite his immense power and philosophical dedication, was acutely aware of his own imperfections. He did not berate himself for them, he used them as fuel for his progress. In his private writings, now known as his Meditations, he counseled himself with this powerful thought: do not be disgusted, do not give up, do not be angry if your actions do not achieve a virtuous result at every point. When you fail, return to the task and be content if most of your acts are worthy of a good man. Notice the language when you fail, not if he expected it. His instruction is to simply return to the task. He emphasizes being content with most of your acts, not all of them. This is the anthem of the Prokopton. It is the understanding that excellence is not a single act, but a habit built through countless attempts, including the stumbles along the way. Progress is measured in inches, not miles. It is the slow, patient work of chiseling away at our reactive impulses to reveal the statue of a reasoned character that lies within the block of marble. Imagine a practical scenario where this philosophy comes to life. You've had a long, frustrating day. You walk through the door at home, and your partner makes an offhand comment about forgetting to run an errand you'd asked them to do. Tired and irritable, you react immediately with a sharp, sarcastic remark. The moment the words leave your mouth, you feel the pang of regret. The old, unstoic response might be to compound the error, to either double down in your anger to justify your position or to collapse into self-recrimination, labeling yourself a bad Stoic and giving up on the practice entirely. But the Stoic path of progress offers a third, far more constructive way. First, you acknowledge the reactive moment with clear-eyed honesty, without the drama of self-flagellation. You might say to yourself, "I reacted with irritation there, that happened." Then you apply your reasoning, you explore the judgment that fueled it. I judge their forgetfulness as a personal slight, as evidence they don't value my requests. Finally, and most importantly, you resolve to do better next time. You might even apologize to your partner, explaining, "I'm sorry for my tone earlier. I was frustrated from my day and I took it out on you. That wasn't fair." This entire process, the acknowledgement, the analysis, the resolution, and the amends, is the practice. The initial reaction is just the starting pistol. The real race is how you choose to run after the stumble. This is where self-compassion becomes your most vital tool on the path. Beating yourself up for a reactive moment is itself a reactive move, a reaction to your own perceived failure. It adds a second layer of suffering on top of the first. The Stoic approach is to treat yourself as a student, not a master. A good music teacher doesn't scream at a student for hitting a wrong note. They calmly identify the error and guide the student through the correct fingering for the next attempt. You must learn to become your own compassionate teacher. When you react poorly, see it as hitting a wrong note in the symphony of your character. Note it, understand what caused it, and gently guide your hands back to the correct position for the next try. Your worth is not diminished by the mistake. Your wisdom is increased by the learning it provides. So how can you actively embrace this spirit of imperfect progress in your own journey? It begins with shifting your internal metrics for success. Instead of measuring your day by whether you were perfectly stoic, measure it by whether you noticed your reactions more often. Did you catch yourself in the act of forming a harsh judgment, even if you still spoke it? That is progress. Did you feel the surge of anger but manage to take one deep breath before responding? That is a monumental victory. Celebrate these small wins. Keep a simple journal, not to catalog your failures, but to note your observations and your tiny improvements. Each time you choose a sliver of space between a stimulus and your response, you are laying another brick on the path toward mastery, understanding that the path itself, with all its twists and turns and occasional setbacks, is the entire point. The destination is not a place you reach, but a manner of traveling you continually refine. We have explored a powerful collection of strategies, each one a tool for reclaiming the space between what happens to you and how you choose to respond. We began with the fundamental practice of the pause, that conscious moment of procession where you interrupt the automatic cycle of stimulus and reaction. We learned to apply the dichotomy of control, investing our energy solely in what we can command: our judgments, our actions, and our character, while gracefully accepting the rest as outside our dominion. We practiced the art of reframing our initial impressions, understanding that events themselves are neutral and that our suffering is born from the stories we choose to tell about them. We built resilience by anticipating challenges through premeditatio malorum, and by viewing every obstacle as an opportunity to practice virtue. We cultivated inner peace by embracing our fate, practicing gratitude for the present, and finding our joy in our own virtuous actions rather than in the fleeting approval of the external world. Each of these practices, woven together, forms a way of being that transforms you from a passive reactor into an active, intentional architect of your life. The ultimate reward for this diligent work is a profound sense of mastery, not mastery over other people or external events, but a far more valuable form of mastery over yourself. When you stop reacting immediately, you are not becoming passive, you are becoming powerful. You are choosing to operate from a place of principle rather than impulse, from clarity rather than confusion. This self-mastery is the source of true freedom, a concept beautifully captured by Epictetus when he said, No man is free who is not master of himself. Your freedom is found in that disciplined gap, in the ability to say to any provoking impulse, "You are just an impression and not at all the thing you appear to be." This is the counterintuitive secret. By doing less in the heat of the moment, by withholding the immediate retort, the panicked decision, the angry reaction, you ultimately achieve so much more. You gain command of your emotions, your relationships, and your destiny. This journey does not require a complete overhaul of your life starting tomorrow. Lasting change is built through small, consistent steps. I encourage you to choose just one practice to focus on this week. Perhaps it is the simple act of inserting a single, deep breath between a triggering event and your response. Maybe it is dedicating 5 minutes each evening to a stoic review, gently asking yourself where you reacted well and where you could improve. Even this tiny commitment begins the process of rewiring your instincts, building that inner citadel of calm, one brick at a time. This is a path of progress, not perfection. There will be days you stumble, and that is perfectly okay. Each moment is a new opportunity to practice. If you found value in exploring these timeless principles of Stoicism, consider subscribing to this channel. We are building a community here, a community dedicated to living with greater wisdom, courage, and peace. I would love to hear about your experiences in the comments below. What is the one strategy you plan to try first? What challenges are you facing? By sharing our journeys, we learn from and support each other. Thank you for investing this time in your own growth. Remember, the power to choose your response is always yours. Go forth and practice.